All right, thanks, Georgia, for starting that. I will declare a quorum and call our meeting to order, and we'll ask our clerk, Georgia Linger, to call the roll for attendance.
Counselor Lewis.
Present.
Counselor Rosenthal.
Present.
Counselor Wong.
Present.
Counselor Nolan.
Present.
And Council President Lynn Peterson and Deputy Council President Ashton Simpson are excused today, and Counselor Gonzalez.
Present, thank you. And Georgia, can you please play the safety video for our in-person attendees?
I'm Jason, and I'm an event production manager. Here at the Portland 5 Centers for the Arts, safety is our #1 priority, not only for our guests, but for our staff members. I'm at the Portland 5 Centers for the Arts, and you're at the Metro Regional Center. The council chambers are located on the 3rd floor. In the event of a fire or fire alarm, please exit through the door in the northeast corner of the room. Go down the stairway to the 2nd floor, exit through the main entrance by the reception desk, and gather in the courtyard outside that entrance. In the event of a medical or fire emergency, please call 911 and notify the security agent at the reception desk. The nearest defibrillator is mounted on the steps leading from the reception desk down to Grand Avenue. Thank you, and come visit us at Portland 5.
Great. And I will now open public communication on non-agenda items. Georgia, if you could describe the procedures to our to folks that are in the audience and online for how we go about that.
If you are testifying in person, please come up to the front and sign up by filling out one of the blue cards in the back of the room and bringing it up to me. If you are testifying on Zoom or by phone, please sign up by using the raise hand function in the reactions or more menus, or by dialing *9. When it's your turn to testify, I'll call on your name or phone number. For those on Zoom, click accept to be promoted to a panelist. Your Zoom window will close briefly before you rejoin as a panelist. You can turn on your camera if you like. Testimony is limited to 3 minutes, and the timer begins when you begin speaking. If you are testifying in person, the timers are located at your testimony table, on the wall, and on the digital screen. Please state your name for the record before testifying. You do not need to give your physical address. And Counselor Gonzalez, I'm not seeing anyone in the virtual audience or the physical audience today.
All right, great. Thanks, Georgia. I'll close public communication. And onto our consent agenda, counselors, we do have one item on today's consent agenda. That is resolution number 25-5479 for the purpose of confirming the appointment of members to the Metro Committee on Racial Equity, which we also call CORE. If I could call for a motion on the consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
And seconded. So moved by Counselor Lewis, seconded by Counselor Huang. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Vote passes unanimously. Thank you. And now next to our presentations. Our first will be a presentation on Research Center follow-up and audit results. In 2020, Metro's auditor, Brian Evans, released an official audit about Metro's Data Resource Center. To follow up on changes and progress made since those recommendations were released, we have with us Auditor Brian Evans. If you could please present and obviously introduce the guest here.
Great. Thank you, Counselor Gonzalez. Good morning, counselors. Reminder that I'm here with Pawa Wanke. He's a senior management auditor in my office. We're here to present the results of our follow-up audit of the Research Center. The purpose of this audit was to determine the status of recommendations from the 2020 audit, and we had 3 objectives. The first was to determine if project documentation was complete and up to date. The second was to determine if communication with clients met project management best practices. And the third was to determine if the project prioritization process sufficiently planned for maintenance and staffing levels. Before Power summarizes the audit results, I want to give a little brief background. When we completed the original audit in 2020, the Research Center was a standalone department. After the audit was completed, the Research Center ended up joining the Planning, Development, and Research Department. So there's a little bit of a structural change between the original and the follow-up audit. Although that change occurred, we found that most of the work was pretty consistent regardless of the organizational structure. And so the team in the Planning and Development Department was dedicated to supporting the Metro Council, internal departments, external clients, and the public by providing information, mapping, and technical services to support public policy and regulatory compliance. The 2020 audit included 8 recommendations that were designed to set clear expectations with clients, help prioritize work, and ensure resources were aligned with expectations. I'll turn it over now to Pawa to talk about the results in more detail.
Hi, so as Brian said, my name is Pawa Wandke. My pronouns are he, him, and his. So though the Research Center also includes the modeling team, it's important to note that our audit focused on the work of the Data Resource Center, or the DRC. We found that the DRC made progress on implementing the 2020 recommendations. Of the 8 recommendations, 4 were fully implemented, 3 were in progress, and 1 was not implemented. So to begin with the implemented recommendations, we recommended the DRC establish a process to reach agreement on scope, schedule, and cost of maintenance and data updates for projects and programs. This recommendation was implemented. The DRC developed improved project proposals that included all of the elements recommended in the 2020 audit, including scope, timeline, budget, and risks. The DRC also began to thoroughly track staff hours on each project using a project tracker, improving their ability to track and report on project cost. We had 2 recommendations that focused on project prioritization that were both implemented. First, we recommended that the DRC complete work to prioritize agency-wide data. We also recommended that the DRC determine the need for an ongoing structure to prioritize agency-wide data. We found the DRC had multiple thorough processes for organizing and prioritizing projects. These processes considered both agency and stakeholder needs. These processes, our analysis found that high priority projects were more likely to be completed, suggesting that the prioritization successfully guided the DRC's work. We also recommended that the DRC document their funding model and communicate it to stakeholders. This was implemented. The DRC's funding model was both easier to understand and clearly documented. Though clearer, the current financial model for the DRC does create risk. Revenue generated from direct services presented risk. Direct services were projects that the DRC completed for other Metro departments. As a part of the budgeting process, the DRC works with those departments to develop a list of projects and allocate staff hours to them. Though the DRC assumes this income, departments were not obligated to pursue these projects. Some projects were not pursued for various reasons, resulting in less revenue than expected. Covering the resulting income gap was sometimes challenging. More conservative budgeting could help mitigate the risk from this financial model. 3 of the recommendations were in progress. We recommended that the DRC use project proposals to document scope, schedule, budget, and risks for each project. While the updated project proposal templates were an improvement, we found that they were used inconsistently. We sampled 6 DRC projects and found only 3 had completed project proposals. Of those, only 1 was signed off on by the client. We recommended the DRC formally document the status of projects by tracking the scope, schedule, and actual cost of each project. The DRC's project tracker was a step towards implementing this recommendation by allowing the DRC to track personnel costs for each project. Most of the DRC's costs were in personnel, so this effectively tracked project cost. The DRC used project management software to manage some projects, but not all of them. We also recommended the DRC ensure project proposals and project status information be available to project teams, client, and management. The DRC was in the process of implementing a system to share information on all ongoing projects with clients and managers. The DRC can implement these in-process recommendations by making more consistent use of project proposals and project management systems. Only 1 recommendation was not implemented. We recommended the DRC establish and document a process for reviewing and approving proposed changes to ongoing projects and programs among project teams, clients, and management. There appeared to be strong communication with clients, but this communication was mostly informal and ad hoc. All the clients we spoke with had a positive experience with the DRC. However, inconsistently documenting communication can increase the risk of miscommunication or misaligned expectations. DRC teams were small and project teams were often only one person, so the need to formally document every change may be reduced compared to the structure that was in place in 2020. To implement this recommendation, the DRC should consider documenting significant changes while making sure the process does not cause unnecessary additional work. Back to you, Brian.
Thanks. That concludes our presentation. I want to thank the COO, the Planning Development and Research Director, and their teams for their help during the audit. I'd also like to thank POWA and our Hatfield Fellow, Annie Price, who worked on the audit, and happy to answer any questions now or if you want to wait until after the management response.
Yeah, thank you, Auditor, for coming today to share your work. For the management response, I would like to lean on our Chief Operating Officer, Marisa, and our Planning, Development, and Research Director, Catherine Charlo, to speak to the auditor's presentation. So Marisa Madrigal and Catherine Charlo.
Thank you, Councilor Gonzalez. Catherine, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Council President Gonzalez. You are the president today? Presiding today, and the rest of council. We appreciate the opportunity to give the management response on this audit. I am Catherine Charlo. I am the Director of the Planning, Development, and Research Department, which, as Auditor Evans noted, became a part of our department after the first audit mentioned here, which was in 2020. So around 2021, the departments merged. I want to start just by thanking the auditor for a comprehensive follow-up audit and the recommendations for follow-up actions. As Auditor Evans described, the audit summarized the process improvements made by the Data Resource Center, the DRC. We appreciated that thorough description and the acknowledgement of the progress that has been made. We also strongly feel as a department and as the DRC that the progress has actually strengthened our department. We've been able to better document our project management processes, communicate even more clearly with clients, and improve our budgeting processes. So we also understand and agree with the areas of continued focus that the audit identifies, specifically relating, as was mentioned, to standardizing documentation and further standardizing client communication processes. Overall, as I mentioned, we believe the processes that we have adopted have strengthened the department. We see a few specific improvements that are already underway. We have an enhanced project proposal and scope development structure that we will continue to improve. And we have a new project tracking system that we have applied and will continue to do so. The benefit of these, in addition to, as I mentioned, good client communications and more consistent project management processes, has really been allowing us to optimize our limited resources as the DRC and our staff expertise. Just speaking to the opportunities for improvement that the auditor noted, there are a few places where we agree and are actually beginning to apply the tools that I just described and the practices more consistently. Our management response, which I believe you all have, outlines in more detail the steps we'll be taking to address this and how we will monitor our compliance moving forward. But I'll just summarize at a very high level, there are several actions I want to share with you. One is really continuing to improve our documentation practices. We understand this is critical, that these protocols are both helpful for project management and client relations, but also to ensure financial stability for the DRC, which helps us really understand how scope changes and sometimes project changes affect both costs and our overall budget. We will continue to make changes to the budgeting process that reflect a more conservative approach, as was suggested. In fact, you've seen evidence of that in our budget presentation earlier this spring, where we have eliminated a position to make sure that we are staying within our allocated general fund. And we are continuing to just budget conservatively at a slightly lower percentage of expectation around those direct service projects, which the auditor mentioned do provide risk. And we agree that there's risk, but we also understand that it's that direct service model that gives us the level of flexibility that we need to innovate. And what has happened over the past couple years is that when other departments have budgeted to have us work on projects, and then they have not actually needed us to do that work for whatever reason, because things were delayed, because they had other ways of getting that information, we have such a strong demand for the work that we have been able to backfill whatever gaps there may have been in the budget by doing other direct service project work for other either grants or other potential clients within and outside the agency. So conservative budgeting is critical. We'll continue to do it, but I did just want to mention that that is part of what gives us the flexibility to respond to changing needs. And then the last thing I'll just say is we are continuing to look at how we can most efficiently manage those project changes in smaller projects. I very much appreciated the audit team's recognition that that documentation is critical, and we don't want to spend so much time documenting tiny changes that we lose the forest for the trees. So our management team is continuing to work on that. And I would just like to mention the senior managers in the room, Cindy Peterson and Madeline Steele. I work very closely with them throughout the days and weeks on the strategy and management. They do fantastic work, and they also are very committed to fulfilling these recommendations and continuing the transparency and accuracy that the DRC is absolutely founded on. So thank you.
Yeah.
Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Catherine. So colleagues, if there's any questions or comments for either auditor or Catherine, we'll welcome them now. See Councilor Rosenthal, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question is, did you notice, clients assume there's internal clients and there's external clients, I assume. Did you notice any difference in the audit between the performance or the tracking between the internal and the external clients?
Thank you for the thank you for the question, Councilor Rosenthal. I think Pao is probably best positioned to answer that, so I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah, so we looked at internal and external clients. External clients were managed entirely differently, unsurprisingly, just because a lot of that's grant funded. They're working with other stakeholders. In terms of level of detail, there's such a small team that there was really only one person who was really managing those external clients. A lot of the same sort of issues there, but they were also very aware of those issues when we spoke with them.
Okay, obviously my concern is a little bit higher when it comes to external clients because that's the face of Metro in a sense, and providing service to them. Internal stuff we can deal with internally. Externally, we sometimes have to do damage control if we don't track it correctly or don't communicate correctly. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Lewis.
Sure, thank you. So in reading over and listening, it seems to me one of the furthest out of compliance areas was the only one of the sample set had signature. So I'm just curious if we're actually in the modern age with signature requirements. Do we want a wet signature, or do we have a digital signature process like most private sector and even some public sector agencies have these days?
Thanks for the question, Councilor Lewis. Again, probably Pao knows the details of the 6, but just to confirm what you've seen, I've seen a mix internally outside of this audit, just a mix of formal DocuSign and kind of e-processes, and then some older processes where it's scanning and things like that. So wouldn't be surprised if there's a mix there, but Pao probably knows specifically.
There wasn't a mix, it was mostly just signatures within the documents. I would say, just from my experience looking at these projects, I don't think that they're high risk enough to require sort of like DocuSign or that sort of signature. Most of these project proposals were within the department, within Metro, and so the potential disagreements there could be remedied within Metro. For external projects, grant agreements and stuff really served as the project proposal, and all of those went through, Metro's policies.
Okay. Yeah, just want to lift up that in this day and age, signature means 3 or 4 different things. And I understand Metro has policy and we have our legal protections, but if we're expecting people to print and do a wet signature, I'm not surprised that we are lacking in compliance, because that's not an industry standard anymore. So, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. And if I could just add one thing, which is we do have a project proposal template in place, and we will continue to work with our teams to make sure that the signature component of that project proposal template and any changes is, it's again, an important piece of that communication. So, but thank you for your technological observation.
Thanks. All right, I don't see any other comments. Marisa, would you like to add anything?
No, just want to again thank the auditors team for all the work, as well as planning for the response, and we look forward to implementing the recommendations. Thank you.
Great. All right, thank you for your work. Our next presentation is a review of the annual report for Metro's Affordable Housing Bond for the year 2024. I'd like to welcome not only our staff, but the Affordable Housing Bond co-chairs, Andrea Sanchez and Jeff Petrillo, who volunteer their time for this critically important work. And, we would also love to thank all the committee members who volunteer their time, their passion, their expertise to support our agency and the region's goals of delivering more affordable housing. So as we know, the region has made some incredible strides with the resources that were provided to create new homes for our residents that need those homes. And we welcome Emily Lieb, a housing policy director, along with staff and community co-chairs, to go through the presentation and then hopefully have a nice conversation after. Emily.
Great. Good morning, Acting Council President and councilors. Did I get that right? Acting?
Yeah,
okay.
I have no idea, actually.
Again, for the record, I'm Emily Lieb.
Acting might be an appropriate description.
Again, for the record, I'm Emily Lieb, Housing Policy Director, and I'm very happy to be here today along with Allison Wicks, our Bond Program Supervisor, and our co-chairs to share our annual report on progress implementing the 2018 Affordable Housing Bond. Allison and I will be sharing a high-level update on our progress, but you can find much more detail in the full report, which is included in your packet. I want to start by acknowledging all of the staff across our housing team and research and communications team that have contributed to this report, along with jurisdictional partners, PD&R and the Data Research Center, and want to specifically acknowledge some staff, a few of whom are in the room today, Jimmy Oporta, Mercedes Evangelista, and Sandy Saunders, who put a lot of effort into all of the robust analysis and data that you find in this report. The report is intended to fulfill Metro's obligation for accountability and oversight in the bond program. Our website also includes a dashboard and project map that are updated regularly and include project profiles of every bond-funded development in the region. Before we move into the presentation, I would like to remind everyone of the guiding principles that were established through a stakeholder process in 2018 and that guide our work throughout this program. Those are leading with racial equity, creating opportunity for those in need, creating opportunity throughout the region, and ensuring long-term benefits and good use of public dollars. And with that, I will turn it over to Allison.
Thank you.
Good morning, counselors. My name is Allison Wicks. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Affordable Housing Bond Program Supervisor. If you can go to the next slide, please. The bond portfolio is expected to provide affordable housing for an estimated 10,600 to 18,000 people across the region once funds are fully expended. By December 2024, 3,877 people have moved into new homes in the first 21 projects to complete lease-up. These projects are located in Beaverton, Cornelius, Forest Grove, Gladstone, Gresham, Happy Valley, Hillsborough, Lake Oswego, Oregon City, Portland, and Tigard. Next slide, please. As you can see, the bond portfolio is distributed across the region, expanding access to housing options in communities across Greater Portland. The geographic distribution of affordable homes provides residents with greater choice about where to live, connects people to schools, jobs, and other opportunities, and prevents displacement in changing neighborhoods. Next slide, please. While the report and the rest of today's presentation will focus on progress through December 2024, this slide shows production progress to date. As of June 2025, the bond program has reached 136% of our total unit production goal, with funding committed to 63 projects representing 5,288 new affordable homes. This chart shows the total number of units in the pipeline and how many are complete in green, under construction in navy, or in pre-construction blue. Our pipeline now exceeds all 3 production goals established by the program with remaining funds left to award. The portfolio includes 1,885 deeply affordable or 30% AMI units, and 2,644 family-sized homes that are 2 or more bedrooms. In addition, 844 units will be permanent supportive housing, targeting households exiting homelessness who need long-term support to be successful in housing. The majority of these projects are new construction, and almost all are multifamily rentals, but the portfolio does include 6 affordable home ownership opportunities. Next slide, please. As Emily mentioned, good use of public funds is a core guiding principle of the Affordable Housing Bond for Metro and its partners. As of December 2024, the Affordable Housing Bond portfolio represents $2.6 billion in investments, of which approximately 20% or $521 million is Metro Affordable Housing Bond funding, which is shown in navy, and nearly 80% is leveraged from other sources. Low-income housing tax credits represent the largest leveraged funding source, which is shown in orange. And of the 60 projects in the portfolio as of December 2024, 50 are utilizing low-income housing tax credits. After LIHTC, the other leveraged funding sources include permanent loans, state and local grants and loans, and sponsor contributions. The Metro Affordable Housing Bond investments have had a significant impact on our local economy. Across the region, bond-funded units represent 13% of multifamily housing construction in 2022 and 2023, and bond-funded projects have supported an average of 2,283 direct jobs in the construction sector annually. These are living wage jobs, paying an average of $93,000 per year in wages and benefits, and bond investments also support jobs in related industries such as insurance, finance, architecture, and engineering. Next slide, please. To ensure equitable access to economic opportunities provided by bond investment, the program aims to direct construction contracts to underrepresented firms. The bond's development projects are on track to meet or exceed the regional goal of at least 20% of construction funding going to COVID, certified minority, women, or emerging small businesses. We had 22 projects complete construction by December 2024, with a combined $165 million in contracts paid to COVID-certified firms. This represents 29% of total construction costs for these projects. Next slide, please. As required by Metro and local partners, bond-funded projects must demonstrate strong commitments to affirmative marketing and low-barrier screening to ensure that projects are reaching priority communities established in the bond measure. 98% of bond-funded projects report partnerships with community-based organizations to support their marketing, and 92 include partnerships with culturally specific organizations. These partners include social service agencies, community centers, organizations serving children and families, organizations serving veterans and seniors, health and behavioral health care providers, and more. Data from these projects that have completed lease-up suggests that these strategies are working. Across the 21 projects that have completed lease-up by December 2024, 59% of occupants were people of color compared to a regional rate of 28%. And in addition, because of the program's commitment to family-sized units, 44% of occupants are children and youth age 17 and under. This is compared to a regional average of 20%. Next slide, please. And then to speak a little bit about alignment with supportive housing services. On-site services can support households with low incomes to remain stably housed. Across the portfolio, 93% of projects include formal partnerships with culturally responsive or culturally specific organizations to provide resident services and other programs. In addition, 30 projects, which is about half of the portfolio, will provide ongoing case management for 831 households in permanent supportive housing units intended for people exiting long-term homelessness. 63% of these projects are leveraging funding from Metro's Supportive Housing Services Fund. And with that, I'll pass it back to Emily.
Great, next slide, please. So we wanted to share a few highlights from milestones that we celebrated over the past year. In 2024, Metro celebrated a total of, over the 2024 calendar year, which is the period for this report. In that year, Metro celebrated a total of 17 bond events, including 9 groundbreaking ceremonies and 8 grand openings. And we want to thank all of the counselors who attended and spoke at those events and share a few examples. One exciting groundbreaking was the Short Stack Affordable Homeownership Project in Milwaukee, which was the first of 6 affordable homeownership projects in the bond to break ground. The project will create 15 two-bedroom cottages and will provide permanent homeownership opportunities in partnership with our community land trust, Proud Ground. Next slide, please. This is the Aldea and Beacon at Gleason Landing, which celebrated a grand opening earlier this year, or last year. The project includes 2 buildings centered around a shared courtyard with a playground and a beautiful mural that you can see here. The Aldea is a 96-unit family-focused project targeting people of color, immigrant and refugee households, and intergenerational families. The Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization, or IRCO, is providing resident services, including after-school programs, job training, and ESL classes. Beacon at Gleason Landing is a 41-unit permanent supportive housing building, and Catholic Charities will be providing case management and wraparound services to PSH tenants in that property. The project also partnered with Stone Soup to offer a barista and culinary training program and a cafe for the public on the ground floor. And IRCO is also offering an early learning center adjacent to the site. Next slide, please. Located in the Cedar Mill community in Washington County, the Opal Apartments celebrated a grand opening last year. The Opal brings 54 affordable homes to older adults, with half of the units serving households with very low incomes at 30% or less of the area median income, by utilizing 24 project-based rental assistance vouchers. And the remaining half serve low-income residents earning less than 60% of AMI. The Opal was designed intentionally for seniors and will provide resident services tailored to the LGBTQ+ community of older adults in partnership with the nonprofit Friendly House and its Elder Pride Services program. Next slide, please. And the final example we wanted to highlight is the Caesar Apartments. In December, the Portland Housing Bureau and Home Forward worked together to purchase the Caesar Apartments, a market-rate apartment building that is being converted into regulated affordable housing. This is part of an innovative strategy to acquire existing market-rate buildings for affordable housing at a low cost, shorter timeline than a new construction project would allow. The Caesar is located in inner southeast Portland near transit, groceries, and parks, and it will offer 47 units of permanent supportive housing for individuals exiting long-term homelessness. Home Forward is working with Multnomah County's Homeless Services Department, formerly the Joint Office, to select a provider for supportive services for the PSH residents when they begin moving in this summer. Next slide, please. We have plans in place to commit nearly all of the remaining bond funds this year, with final projects expected to break ground by 2027. This slide shows the anticipated timeline for the disbursement of remaining funds and the completion. The disbursement is the line in green, and the completion of those projects, following that in the dark blue line. In 2025 and 2026, we will continue to see many homes complete construction, and then you can see a significant drop-off in the future years. With the Portland Housing Bond also fully allocated, this means we will see a slowdown in affordable housing development in the absence of new resources. We will still see some state and federal investment coming into the region, but it will not be to the scale we've seen for the past decade, and likely will not be able to achieve the deep affordability and family-size homes that we've achieved through these local bond measures. Next slide, please. In general, the housing bond portfolio costs align with similar affordable housing trends in the region and nationally. Across the industry, and especially in the past 4 years, we've seen unprecedented escalation in construction costs due to labor shortages, supply chain issues, increased cost of materials, and interest rate increases. At the same time, the state is facing funding constraints for affordable housing as a result of oversubscription of private activity bonds, which are necessary to finance 4% low-income housing tax credits. As a result, newer projects are requiring a higher average Metro bond subsidy and higher per unit costs due to these trends. Metro has been working with our partners to respond to the challenges through innovative strategies such as the acquisition we highlighted earlier. In addition, as you all know, earlier this spring, in consultation with our oversight committee, Metro worked to quickly allocate $26 million in interest earnings to provide additional funding to support projects in reaching the finish line. And with that, I want to pass it to our oversight co-chairs, Jeff Petrillo and Andrea Sanchez, to provide their highlights and close us out.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes. Thank you. I will go first and Andrea will follow. My name's Jeff Petrillo, and I am a resident of Washington County for over 20 years. And Portland Overlook neighborhood for several years before that. Just want to, well, it's hard to add much more to what the staff has provided since they have done a great job collating and bringing the information forward. As chair, one of the chairpersons, I would like to say that they do an excellent job in supporting us, supporting the members, and providing the information that you need. The slide you're looking at is regarding the Oversight Committee review, which is mostly focused on, in our first half of the year, is receiving the reports from the implementation partners or the jurisdictions. And it's a interesting and intense time for us to learn from the partners what they're doing, what they're struggling with, what their successes are. Also just to hear their excitement because they've been pretty successful to date doing what they're doing, despite some changes that market dynamics that have occurred over the last 2 years. The remaining time of during the last 6 months is also to come up with recommendations which are outlined in the report and are also, in general, our recommendations and observations are included in the first 5 pages for the executive summary. If you can go to the next slide. This is mostly, I'm going to, I think it's important for the Metro councilors to hear from the chairs about what our opinion is. I think both Andrea and I are professionals in the affordable housing field, and I've spent 20 plus years working in the field. And I'd have to say, of all the acronyms of organizations that have been involved in metro area housing, affordable housing, I view this as one of the most successful programs that I've seen in working in the area. And I think, I don't know if it's just beginner's luck for Metro, but it's pretty, you should be proud of it. I'm proud of it. I think the voters should be better informed about it, because there are so many, the deep affordability that's been achieved, the leverage with other public and private dollars, the overachievement of the bond goals by a significant amount, the diverse level and the engagement level of the oversight committee members. We have, the selection has been done well. And I'd say the very strong and competent staffing that you did for bringing people on for housing within Metro. I think the program's also been trying to be responsive to as market dynamics have changed from when the program first started. And I personally am very proud of the Opal Apartments. I just wanted to highlight that. That's quite an achievement to establish. It's actually a joint venture of the Christ Methodist Church there, so it's a faith-based operation. And I am a member of that church. I haven't attended in a while, but I'm still in the member roles. But I'm proud of that. There's been that venture, and during Pride Month, I think we really need to celebrate that. I mean, to have a community that serves, senior LGBTQ plus residents who, in addition to perhaps struggling economically, also struggle with issues of identity and social pressures and conflicts, and not having enough, particularly aging, not having enough support, perhaps. I think that, and I think going forward, the Metro should consider whether it's in a future program or in remaining time, the possibilities of, more innovative approaches like putting more emphasis on the market conversion projects as they arise. Because of some of the economics in the multifamily market, there are some market rate projects that are in distress and would be opportunities for conversion, particularly Class C, or what we call naturally affordable housing, naturally occurring affordable housing. And also there's a land acquisition piece that I think is important as well, particularly as the multifamily market has been a bit oversupplied nationally, and so the developers have cut back on acquiring land for multifamily, which is an opportunity for public entities to enter into the market and purchase sites for future development. And just lastly, I want to mention, the staff mentioned the number of direct construction jobs annually. The National Association of Home Builders and HUD have done studies every 5 or 6 years that they update and that indicate the job creation effect of low-income housing tax credit projects, which most of other bond projects are. And the impact is far greater than what is typically assumed. For every unit created, this is a national study they did, and it was vetted with economic data. 1.2 jobs of construction-related jobs are created, both direct and indirect jobs, but are related to the construction for every unit. And so if you take 1.2 and let's just multiply it by 5,000 for year-end 2024 for Metro bond activity, that's 6,000 direct and indirect jobs. When you include the economic multiplying effect of people buying materials or or retail or other services, and then obviously the construction ends and then operations begin. The study also indicated that for every unit of tax credit or affordable housing, let's say, 0.3 jobs are created that are permanent full FTE jobs that, for instance, the property management and both the direct and indirect of that and the maintenance. If you multiply 0.3 times 5,000, that's like 1,500 direct and indirect permanent jobs or ongoing jobs. So this has been quite an economic generator for the region, for the metro region. So I'll leave it at that. If there's any questions I think I'll leave it to after Andrea speaks for us to jointly address if there are any. So
Wonderful. Andrea.
I'll turn it to Andrea. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. So for the record, I'm Andrea Sanchez, and I am a Multnomah County resident. And I'm also the co-chair of the Affordable Housing Bond Oversight Committee, and here to talk with you all today on behalf of the Oversight Committee are recommendations that follow the process that Jeff described for you. And our recommendations really fall into three buckets. If you could go to the next slide. So the first bucket is to support the success of projects that are in the bond pipeline, to plan for the next phase of the bond portfolio, and to continue to plan for the future. I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of these buckets. So the first, supporting the success of projects in the pipeline. This includes the allocation of available interest earnings that I know Metro Council reviewed earlier this spring. And Emily spoke a little bit to the financial challenges that projects are facing. And the idea is that this $26 million would be distributed to the jurisdictions and be able to be used for those financial challenges. We recommend that, and Jeff, you just spoke a little bit about this too, to continue to support creative uses of the housing bond funds, like affordable home ownership or the market rate acquisition. We also strongly recommend that staff continue to coordinate closely with Oregon Housing and Community Services. And then lastly, as you probably have also heard already from staff, the Oversight Committee would like to work with staff and staff with the council about alternative approaches to allocating future interest earnings. And this is primarily because the scale of the dollars that will be left may not be enough to justify distributing to each jurisdiction equally.
Right.
So the next bucket is about what's next. How do we plan for the next phase of the bond portfolio? And the Oversight Committee discussed and recommends exploring a regional tool to support housing navigation. And specifically, the discussion was around, is there a tool that could be created to enhance or ease access for constituents to understand what housing opportunities are available. Second, to continue to monitor and learn from the dedicated permanent supportive housing units that already are to complete the assessment that's already begun of asset management and monitoring. And this is as a means to steward the bond portfolio and to ensure a good long-term public benefit. And then lastly, continuing to plan for the future. So I think it's really clear that the bond has been incredibly successful. However, this is really one of our oversight, or maybe even two of our oversight committee members wanted to make sure that we communicated to you all today that while we have increased the supply of affordable housing units, there's still more demand for affordable housing than the Metro bond has been able to meet. And so as we look to the future, how do we ensure sufficient supply of affordable multifamily housing to address the regional need that's out there, despite the incredible success, of the bond? So that's what I have. Thank you so much, and open to answering any questions.
Yeah, thank you. Colleagues, comments or questions? Would welcome them. Councilor Rosenthal?
Oh, sure. Well, I was waiting for somebody else to raise their hand first.
I saw you going for the finger raise.
Yeah, I was just getting ready. Well, first of all, I have to say that, the beat goes on. I'm pleased to note that since just past 2024, we opened 116 units in Tualatin, and then that adds the city of Tualatin to the list of cities that have it, and Wilsonville is adding another one, which is under construction, so it's nice to, and those are in my district, so I'm happy to note that. I have two questions. One is a very simple question. The question is, it is my understanding that, that probably the majority of these also have TOD funding, from talking to people, that TOD funding sometimes is a sort of a little bit of a stimulus. It's not a lot of money in many cases. Comes to us through RAFA, through TriMet, which passes through the money to us. Are the majority of them also have TOD funding? And then the second question is, one of the concerns we often hear is that, well, the cost of construction of these units is very high. Mm-hmm. Have we identified any low-hanging fruit and ways in which those costs could be controlled in some sense? I mean, I realize the larger thing about, getting private equity bonds and so forth is one method, but are there any low-hanging fruit in the construction realm that we could use? Some people have suggested, well, we cut out air conditioning. That's not going to happen. Or we cut out certain environmental concerns, and I'm just wondering if that's been something you looked at.
Yeah, I can start with the TOD question. I don't know the actual number or percent of projects that also include Metro TOD funding off the top of my head. Many projects do. You're right that it's a smaller portion of funds, and it would fall into that state and local grant bucket issue, that we see in the chart that we showed, but we can follow up and get you that number.
And I don't know if the co-chairs want to speak to the innovative strategies to reduce the cost.
Well, I could speak to just the overall total development cost for affordable housing. It is not uncommon where 30%, up to 30% of the cost to build a unit are related to soft costs. So those are legal fees, some of the fees that come along with using a variety of sources to build affordable housing. So to me, that is an area where there could be some innovation around how to reduce those costs. In terms of material costs, I feel like that is actually something that is often out of our control, and it's so subject to the market. Unlike the soft costs, in my opinion, where that's something that feels like it's a little bit more in our control from a policy perspective. Yeah, and I think, something that did come up with the oversight committee is this trying to strike a fine balance between not cutting costs by introducing materials in a unit that don't have as long of a useful life, in order to get the construction costs down. I don't know, Jeff, if you have anything to add.
The cost per unit for affordable housing is an Achilles heel for the affordable housing industry. It's something that's hard to talk about relative to market rate. Nationally, market rate developers are typically, on aggregate, looking at $300,000 a door, and that's what they base their financing on. There may be 2 attorneys involved. Affordable housing would have about 6 attorneys involved.
At least.
And that's just one factor, and this is the soft cost piece. You have consultants. You have a lot more requirements. So, it astounds me to see $500,000 a door. You would really be concerned if you lived in California, where the amount is $800,000, $700,000 to $900,000. I mean, and then we get criticized for, people can buy a house for $500,000 a door. Ways to reduce it. I think there are ways to reduce it, but some of them aren't. It's just endemic to the product. It's a public asset. And what I do remind people when this comes up, and I'm, a fiscal conservative to some degree, and I struggle with this. But when we build a light rail, or New York City or London, or builds a subway, or we dedicate money to build a library or a museum, these are public, multi-generational public assets that are amortized over time. And so the upfront cost relative to the public benefit, I do think is eventually amortized, because these are not units that can be converted to market, reasonably speaking, because they're locked in for at least 60 years under regulations, and hopefully longer than that. So you're talking about at least 2 generations if you assume 30 years per generation. If you look in Europe, which has less of an affordable housing problem, it's because they have generational affordable housing that was committed by governments many decades ago. And so the upfront argument is hard to swallow, the cost, but I do think there is a long-term benefit that succeeds us all generations from now.
Thanks. I concur.
Fantastic. Councilor Lewis and then Councilor Wong.
Sure, I have 2 questions, if that's okay. The first is, I really appreciate the crispness of this report, and I do think that we're starting to take our victory lap while there's still some projects in still pre-development and construction. So I do think it's important for you to have raised the plan for the next phase of the bond portfolio. I am curious, it feels to me like we're just entering our land trust era. And I'm curious why that's not a bullet point. If there's anything that the committee's discussed, since almost all the affordable home ownership / land trust projects are on the back end, because it took us a little while to figure out that model. If there's any recommendations that you might have as we are just doing those parts of the projects.
I would say that the Oversight Committee did not speak to that specificity. More, our discussions were around that there's been a lot of success. It took a lot of work to do the affordable home ownership model, and so to continue to explore that, given how much time and energy has been invested in the creative thinking that was needed to get to the construction start.
Yeah, the scope of the bond and the direction, has been deep affordability of rental, permanent supportive housing emphasis, equity housing, and equitable access. And I think the home ownership, and staff can perhaps say, it has been a tailpiece. And I assume going forward, if there were another program, or that homeownership will likely take play a bigger role, because the pandemic increased the cost of homeownership by 40 or 50% over a 3-year period, 2-year period. We probably have the largest homeownership crisis since the end of the World War II. And just so we understand, state land use goal 10 is housing, and we're not going to solve either the affordable housing or the market rate housing supply problem very quickly. This is going to take at least a decade. We are that far behind in terms of supply across the board, and this is something we'll be struggling with as Metro residents going forward.
My second question, as OHCS has moved to their readiness criteria, have we lost ground or lost standing on projects here in the metro area? Because obviously the funding stacks, as you have pointed out, are so fragile. If we're losing time because readiness has been a disadvantage in the metro area, I'd like us to fully understand the scope of those impacts.
I don't believe that the readiness criteria has negatively impacted metro pipeline projects. I think where I personally experience in my profession, where I see there's maybe been some setback, is because of the new ORCA process that OHCS is implementing, although they are already making changes. I believe next month they'll be coming out with changes to the process, is more that there's so much demand for the OHCS funds for projects that already had a metro bond allocation. And so it's not about readiness as much as it's about waiting in line and trying to understand when the metro funded projects are going to come off the wait list and get an allocation of dollars from OHCS. And so when we have this, it's almost like a bit of a bottleneck that I know metro staff and OHCS are working to release that bottleneck. But when we wait, costs continue to go up. And that's the issue that I see for the projects that are still in that pre-development category that haven't reached construction. I don't know, staff, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I would just, the slide we showed where you saw the peak, we're really at the peak of this this bond, and so it's that bottleneck. I do think we've had some projects with concerns about the timeline, but I don't think we've had any significant delays due to the readiness criteria. But I'm looking to Allison to correct me if I'm wrong.
No specific examples come to mind. In coordination with OHCS, which was also a recommendation last year, our team meets regularly with one of the technical advisors at the on the OHCS affordable rental housing teams, and we share our pipeline information. We sometimes have projects on our list that haven't made it onto their list yet, and so we try to be transparent in that information sharing to let them know when our kind of football of projects is moving through the snake of OHCS funding.
If I could just add one more. But Councilor Lewis, I really appreciate your question, because I think it could be more applicable to the planning for the future, because meeting readiness to proceed criteria generally means you have to spend money. And so when our goal is to support BIPOC developers or culturally responsive developers, the output of cash that's needed that is at their risk is going to become greater as that readiness to proceed criteria becomes stricter.
Great, I'm really heartened that we're able to get the time of that staff person at OHCS. particularly for the projects that are the best in the region, and they're the ones that have made it through our process. I just broadly worry that OHCS resources that are naturally tilted a little against the metro region are continuing to stall where we need it the most here. So even our non-metro projects, I just want us to be able to champion them getting through readiness. But thank you.
And if I may add, Councilor Lewis, I would encourage the elected officials to do their part for being able to, provide that feedback to the other electeds at the state to say, this is what we need. I realize it's a rope pull sometimes, and so back and forth.
Yeah, and I think there's also the balance between, at the beginning of legislative session, I was talking to several legislators who were surprised to hear that readiness was a rough growing pains kind of moment, because we all want to get there. Readiness makes sense, but the growing pain year/2 years is not great. People who thought they were at the front of the line are now suddenly in the back. And that costs a lot of money. So I tried it with legislators who just didn't get it at all. So I do think that other locals do get it, so thank you.
Which I think ties in well with, or it's related to what Councilor Rosenthal mentioned about cost. If somebody has been waylaid in their funding cycle for allocation purposes, there's another year of holding. That another year of holding is an additional cost that a market rate would just back out of and say, I'm done, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Councilor Wong?
Great, thank you. It's always great to have results and presentations that are like you're exceeding your goals in all these ways. So thank you. We don't see that very often. And gosh, what a great resource on the Oversight Committee. You all are such experts and, really help bring that, expertise and guidance to the whole program. So thank you. I really like the frame that all these projects are community and public assets. And I'm hoping, if the co-chairs might help provide some advice going forward, actually into the coming decades, of like how we maintain, these projects as community assets for as long as possible. So I know a lot of our metro area projects are currently considered distressed assets, and also we know that roofs break down and people have to refinance. And I'm just hoping, what would your advice be as we think about the future, and not even just for this council, but for future councils? How do we make sure that these assets actually don't become liabilities in the future where they need bailouts or whatever, or emergency infusions? So what should we be thinking about as we think about the future to make sure these projects, serve their purpose as long as possible?
Yeah. Well, I guess I would offer that I don't have a lot of answers to that specifically today, but I think that Metro Council has heard our recommendations from prior years about this question and recommending that this be studied. And so it's really great that there is a third-party contractor, the Housing Development Center, that's on board to do an assessment to get it answering what you're talking about, Councilor Wang. And I look forward to seeing the results of that so that we can continue to discuss it with staff and as an oversight committee and eventually bring that back to you, the results of that. Staff, I don't know if you want to add anything.
So I think we have that assessment underway. It was a response to previous recommendations from the Oversight Committee as well as our auditor to do an assessment of this Metro bond portfolio to look at what does the long-term trajectory look like, what are the roles of our state and local partners in monitoring the portfolio, and what are opportunities to strengthen that stewardship as we expect these assets to last for generations in our community. In addition, I think you also spoke kind of broadly to older assets in our community, and that has been something
in progress.
that we've looked at as part of our analysis of future investment opportunities, including a recommendation that we consider for future funding, including the preservation of existing regulated affordable housing as an eligible use of any future funding.
Do we anticipate, like, in 30 years, like, all the bond projects from this will need a roof at the same time? Or that's like, a worry I have
in progress.
in the back of my mind where, at some point, we're going to be limiting our ability to expand affordable housing stock because we have to focus so much on preservation. But that's probably a decades in the future question, but I think something worth, thinking about.
Well, it's true with any asset. And so like highways, we build highways up front for X millions, and then we forget, or I should say sometimes there's been a lack of understanding that those roads require maintenance over a long period of time, and we don't have that money in many public jurisdictions. Fortunately, these projects are public-private ventures in many cases, and all of the people involved want to make sure that they're going to get their investment out of it on the tax credit side, or that the public wants, government entity wants accountability, and the permanent loan bank wants to make sure the loan gets paid. So there are reserves, property reserves set up that are set aside each month, each year, and so there is some of that that's contributed, but after 30 years, you will have a need for recapitalization of some of them projects. I would say most, just because capital items expire and you have to replace them. So I think this will become an issue for future, entity or future policy and public officials to deal with. Is how do we keep them going? Part of it is quality construction on the front end.
Okay. Well, something for our future generations to think about, I guess.
Yeah. Councilor Rosenthal, did you want to say something again?
I just wanted to add a real quick asterisk to a comment that Councilor Lewis made regarding land banking, and I just wanted to note that since I mentioned the TOD group, moved this week to add additional monies to their land acquisition potential, and so they recognize that this is that the market is there, that there are lands available that could be opportunistically acquired for further development, which may lead to other bonding supports. So it's recognized.
Great, thanks. I just want to put a bow on comments made by the council, and for our co-chairs, appreciate the expertise, but also to hear your recommendations find themselves in your voice, to hear them as well. I just feel so grateful that we've been able to lean on you for the implementation of this and for helping us guide, hopefully what will continue to be a very strong commitment to affordable housing. So thank you. And to our staff, of course, for being stewards of this, Allison, Emily, and Jimmy, of course, I see you back there too, and anyone else that I might be missing, for continuing to carry this. And until next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
I am going to move our meeting into our resolutions. We have a resolution number 25-5501 for the purpose of adopting the annual budget for fiscal year 2025-26 for making appropriations and levying ad valorem taxes. So it's this resolution and the next one after this as well that will help us bring an end to our budget season. So my appreciation to the council office, the COO's office, all the folks for working hard to prepare this budget. And this year's budget has been challenging in many ways, and there were difficult choices and trade-offs to made that I know we've managed with grace and with empathy. So these resolutions, we will take one at a time, and to help us kick off those conversations with a brief presentation is our Chief Financial Officer, Brian Kennedy.
Thank you, Councilor Gonzalez. Members of the Metro Council, my name is Brian Kennedy, Chief Financial Officer at Metro. I use he, him pronouns. I want to run through a few slides just to take a moment. I think lest it appears that we are considering a $1.8 billion budget with little discussion. I think it's important to recognize the steps we've taken to get to this point and the work that's gone into this process. I also want to thank Councilor Gonzalez for your comments about the challenging nature of this budget. It has been really hard, and I think it's important to start by recognizing that this has significant impacts on the agency and the people that work in this agency. So we really appreciate the care with which everyone involved has approached this. Let's go to the next slide. So as you mentioned, there are two resolutions today. 255501 adopts the budget. 255502 adopts the capital improvement plan, 5-year capital improvement plan, and Metro's financial policies. And I will run through both of those separately, or together in this presentation, but one at a time. Next slide, please. So Resolution 25-5501 does a couple key things. So in adopting the 25-26 annual budget, it sets appropriations, so the amount that the organization is legally able to spend, and then it levies ad valorem taxes. And there are actually two elements to that. The first is levying Metro's permanent rate, 9.66 cents per thousand, and then Metro's local option levy rate, also 9.66 7 cents per thousand. And then it sets our debt service levy, which is assessed as a dollar amount, recovering the amount of property taxes necessary to cover debt service for voter-approved general obligation bonds. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, our budget process starts back in the fall with the 5-year forecast and budget development. We go through a number of steps, and here we are at the final stage of the budget process, adopting the budget, which is a legally required action prior to July 1st, the start of the new fiscal year. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, the budget process, the public phase really begins in April. We had 5 public hearings this fiscal year. We had 9 department presentations, and then 10 separate council meetings or work sessions where the council, either acting as the budget committee or in your role as Metro Council, deliberated and discussed the budget. Next slide, please. As Marisa laid out when the budget was proposed back in April, the budget message had a few key themes. First, it represents a reset in how we provide a number of ongoing services. There are some significant changes, notably the consolidation of the Oregon Convention Center and Expo Center under a single management structure. The budget also stabilizes and preserves Metro core services. Even as we went through this financial time, a core value was making sure that we're able to deliver on those commitments to the region and to the voters of the region. And it also includes additional reserves to respond to disruptions and uncertainty into the future. Next slide, please. So how we approach that, there were a number of cost reductions across the budget, including personnel and materials and services. There were some structural reorganizations and leadership changes. We also made a number of strategic one-time investments designed to modernize operations to make Metro more resilient. And then we have some new centralized administrative functions that are offset by other reductions. Again, trying to be more efficient and nimble as we deal with uncertainty and an increasingly challenging financial environment. Next slide, please. Some of the significant changes, in terms of budget reductions, the biggest reductions were in parks and nature and visitor venues. We had some significant staff reductions responding to really challenging financial circumstances in those areas. We had some smaller reductions and realignments in central services. We continued investments in Metro's financial and human resources systems, our enterprise resource planning system project. On the kind of the positive news side, the zoo bond is ramping up. So voters and residents of the region are going to start seeing the benefits of the passage of that bond measure very soon. And then we also are starting to see implementation of the WPES Systems Facilities Plan. Also good news for the region. Next slide, please. We had no councilor budget notes or amendments this fiscal year. Next slide, please. Budget summary. Just as a reminder, the total adopted budget is a little over $1.8 billion. Our total FTE, just under 1,130. In terms of how that changed from the current fiscal year budget, it's about a 20% decrease, though it's important to note that most of that decrease are not budget reductions that we talked about in parks and the visitor venues. A lot of it is related to one-time funds that were previously expended and accounting for supportive housing services funds in our budget that have already been dispersed to counties. The change in FTE, the decrease of 52.15, about a 4.5% decrease, that's more reflective of the actual change in the budget that's a result of that financial stress in the organization. Next slide, please. So the property tax levy, as I mentioned before, has three different components: our permanent rate, the local option levy rate, our debt service rate. I mentioned when we actually certify with the county, the debt service rate is expressed as a fixed dollar amount. We show it as a cents per thousand rate as a comparison. What that means for a homeowner with an assessed value of around $250,000 a year is about $147, which I think is a useful metric. Next slide, please. So Resolution 25-5502 adopts the 5-year capital improvement plan. You heard from departments in their budget presentations about their major capital projects, so the 5-year plan really reflects that. And then it adopts the Metro's financial policies. This is something we do every year. Our financial policies are a really important part of demonstrating fiscal discipline, and adopting it every year sends a good message to rating agencies about our commitment to things like reserve policies and other good financial practices, how we do debt management and ongoing continuing disclosure for all of our general obligation debt. There are no significant changes in the financial policies this year, but again, readopting it to signify that they continue to matter and we use them as a regular management tool. Next slide, please. Just to wrap up, I want to take a moment to thank our budget team. So Amanda Akers, our budget manager, Cinnamon Williams, our budget director, did a huge amount of work getting us to the finish line. Our finance managers, who are obviously critical, senior leadership team, department directors, going through this really challenging process. This year, the Human Resources Department and our labor partners were essential in navigating this really challenging budget. The executive leadership team, Marisa Madrigal, Holly Calhoun, Andrew Scott, Craig Stroud, all essential. And I think most importantly, the Metro Council engaging deeply in this process is really important, and helping the region see that we take this very seriously and that we are focused on the things that really matter in the region. So with that, thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Brian. Councilors, any questions on the budget before I call for a motion?
Yeah,
Councilor Rosenthal?
Yeah, a couple quick questions. Then I must admit, I do not remember seeing the Metro Regional Center CIP summary before. I've seen it for all the other ones. But my question is, first of all, two quick questions. Privacy booths, I assume that's not related to the restroom issue, and also for the exterior, I guess what you call it, the lobby stairs and tiling R&R. But does this include completion of the upgrades to the entryway, including the planters and the support for all that? Is that included in this 25-26 budget, or is that complete at this point in time?
I believe the exterior project is still underway, so I think that project represents the completion of that project. And the privacy booths, I believe, relate to stations in the building for employees to take calls, not in the cubicle environment. So it's an additional investment in some of those facilities.
So, like those
phone booths.
Those little tiny phone booths. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Counselor?
No.
Okay. Counselor Wong?
Thank you. Gosh, I'm glad you went through that, because I know a lot of work and thought and care went into this process. So I want to send my appreciations to everyone that worked on this. Yeah, it shows the values and character so much more in difficult times. So thank you. In potential, challenging financial times, now and into the future, I'm wondering if you could summarize, like, how our budget is becoming more resilient into the future, and what areas of flexibility or reserves or things like that. Just because as we enter uncertain times, I'm sure that hopefully was a budget value and mentality, but how might that play out?
That's an excellent question, Councillor Wong. I'll say a couple things, and then if Marisa wants to add, I think that would be excellent. I think you see it in a couple different ways. Number one, it is being more disciplined or extra disciplined about making sure that we are meeting our reserve policies, setting aside additional reserves so that we have the resources to be able to respond to uncertainty, respond to problems. Reserves, I think it's important to note, they don't exist to, I don't want to sound too flip, but to prevent all bad things from happening. Bad things may happen, but having solid reserves gives us time to react to them and to mitigate the impact of those bad things or uncertain things. So that was a key focus. We also wanted to make sure that as we were making new investments, we didn't commit ourselves to expenses that we couldn't sustain over the long term. And then most importantly, I think in places where we had a very acute financial stress, parks and nature, and the visitor venues, make reductions that we think put us in a place to manage sustainably over the next several years. So we don't end up in a cycle where we're coming back every year, kind of chipping away at these budgets because we didn't make significant enough reductions in the beginning.
Yeah, I think Brian said that really well. We definitely, Brian and I at the beginning of the pandemic, Metro was in a cycle where we had to cut, and then we had to cut again, and we saw sort of the strain and the damage that can cause. And so while we cannot predict the future, we really sought to cut deep enough to be able to sustain what we plan to fund in the future. And also really asked ourselves and our departments to look carefully at what we are spending money on, what we are creating capacity for, understanding that, we are not the only government in the region that is under strain. Tax dollars are precious, and the services that we provide to the community are important. So I think this budget really does represent a reset in many ways, and sort of every corner, looking at the way that we provide administrative functions, the complexing, the combining that Craig is doing with OCC and Expo, really leveraging the expertise that we have there. So I think we've not only reduced our expenses, but have done so in a way that is informed and allows us to be strategic going forward with our investments. So thank you for the question.
I feel like for our agency, we've had a commitment to build back better for a while. What would you say the tagline for this budget is? That's a good question.
This is. It feels like a bit of a hunker down. I don't know if I could come up with a pithy tagline on the fly, but I feel like this definitely puts us in a position where we are stable, we are grounded, we are focused. We are looking forward and up for the challenge of weathering whatever comes ahead. And I think there's also some places where we're making strategic investments for the future, not just the complexing at Expo, but the $2 million for investment in, or the $2+ million for investment in looking at the historical memorialization and Hall A, and looking at equipment to attract more and different kinds of clients. I'm really excited about that. I know Craig is bullish on Expo and feels like we can really bring up the revenues there and the activity there. I think it's a tight budget, but a strategic one as well.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
And I'll work on something snappy.
3 words max.
3 words, yeah. Has to fit in a tweet.
Stable, grounded, and resilient, sounds good.
Yeah, I like it.
Councilor Lewis.
Sure, thanks so much. I just want to kind of pick up, Brian, where you started with, today feels like a relatively empty room with little fanfare for what is both a very large budget, but also a very large process. I think it takes you 9 months to get to today, so starting now, you got your vacation before we start all over again. And we see you all over the place. We see Cinnamon, we see Caleb, but your department has like 80-some people. So I just want to give you some space to offer any thanks to people whose names we don't know and can't think ourselves.
Thank you, Councilor Lewis. I think I mentioned our budget team, our team of financial analysts who support the process, and they do a ton of work in the process. I think one of the things that is kind of missed, maybe by the public, I don't think by you, is how much work our departments do in building the budgets. That particularly if you look at parks and the venues, they started their budget process kind of earlier than everybody else because they knew they were facing this financial distress. And I think in particular the management teams in Parks and Nature, the Convention Center, P5, Expo, had to make just really kind of heart-wrenching choices going through this process. And I think they are the people that I would probably kind of really lift up in this moment because they had the hardest job, I think, going through this. And I know they couldn't have done it without a massive amount of support from the Human Resources Department, which they're always involved in the budget, but I think they really had to be involved in a different way this year that they haven't since the pandemic. And then as we moved into the implementation phase, kind of the work we've done to maintain good relationships with our labor partners has been really essential because they are critical in how those really hard decisions roll out and how they affect the actual people in those jobs.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, seeing no other comments, I'd want to say to thank you. And I think this budget reflects our values as we, approach interesting headwinds, challenging headwinds for our region, but a clear focus on our people, on the residents that we serve, and the promises that we've made, importantly. So I know that this budgeting process is very intense, and Brian and Marisa and the countless other folks that have participated in that, we have our appreciation. Councilors, if I could call for a motion.
I'll move 255501.
I'll second.
All right, so we have it moved by Councilor Lewis, seconded by Councilor Rosenthal. Any more discussion before we call for a vote? Seeing none, Georgia, can you please call roll?
Counselor Nolan,
Yes.
Counselor Wong,
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal,
Aye.
Counselor Lewis,
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Aye. Thanks, Georgia. The vote passes and our budget is adopted. Next resolution, number 25-5502, for the purpose of adopting the capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2025 through 2026 through 2029 through 2030 and readopting Metro's financial policies. Brian, any extra words before this consideration? Okay.
No.
All right, thank you. I know this was a part of the presentation. So, counselors, are there any additional questions on the capital improvement plan or financial policies we'll be readopting? Okay, seeing none, can I call for a motion, please?
Counselor Lewis,
no.
Calling for a motion, it's okay.
I will move to adopt 255502.
All right, thank you, Counselor Rosenthal. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
All right, excellent. So we have a motion by Counselor Rosenthal, second by Counselor Nolan. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, Georgia, can you please call roll?
Absolutely. Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Rosenthal,
Yes.
Counselor Wong,
Yes.
Counselor Nolan,
Yes.
and Counselor Gonzalez.
Yes, excellent, thank you. Resolution is passed and adopted. Great work, Brian. And finally, our last resolution for today will be resolution number 25-5490 for the purpose of confirming the appointment of members to the Future Vision Commission. Counselors, we have talked about this project for a long time. This commission will guide the preparation of our vision, and the work today will help us charge them with that in preparation. So I simply want to say I'm so excited to be able to work with not only the council but our staff on this, and especially appreciate everyone's effort to help get us to this moment with a final recommendation. We had a lot of incredible applicants and a really big undertaking that is going to be just wonderful. So here today we have with us Malou Wilkinson, Deputy Director at Planning, Development and Research, and Jess Zadeb, Principal Regional Planner.
Thank you. We're really happy to be here today. I think we have a presentation, Georgia. All right, counselors. Again, I'm Malou Wilkinson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Planning, Development and Research Department. Next slide, please. So, as you know, we're really excited to be working with the council to renew the region's 50-year vision as required by Metro's voter-approved charter. And this vision guides our work as a region. The charter also calls for the Metro Council to appoint a Future Vision Commission to develop a vision for your consideration. And so we're here today with Resolution 25-5490 for your consideration, which would appoint the Future Vision Commission and define their charge. Next slide. We really appreciate the time that you all have spent with us since January of this year to define this work and our approach. This included 2 work sessions with conversations that were facilitated by HRNA, a consultant who brought expertise from around the country to help you identify the important topics that you would like the Future Vision Commission to consider, as well as helping to define some key components of the process. And you can be reminded of the schedule and the opportunities that you all had to interact with us throughout that process and define it on the screen. Next slide. Last fall in 2024, you asked us to develop an application process to recruit Future Vision Commission members, and that process has been open from the fall to spring of this year. We had over 100 applicants from across the region. It's really exciting that there were so many people who were interested in dedicating the time to shape the future of our region. Our department convened staff from multiple departments within Metro to review the applicants and provide guidance to look at the different look at the potential commissioners and provide you with information for your review and consideration. And the list that we have has been developed in conversation with all of you. Next slide, please. So as you heard from Councilor Gonzalez, we have so many qualified and interested applicants for this commission, and we know that we want to engage all of those people who took the time to apply. There will be a lot of opportunities throughout the process to engage, but these up on the screen are a few of the examples that we hope to include throughout the process. Next slide. So we're really excited about this group. You can see the names up on the screen. This group that will come together to develop and recommend the future vision to the Metro Council. for your consideration. Our goal is to have that recommendation to you by the end of 2026. This group represents diverse interests from the arts, with both a creative writer and an executive producer in the group, businesses, both large and small, the faith community, agriculture, transportation, academia, the environment, and climate. It's a diverse group, relatively gender balanced, half of the folks who identify as persons of color, a range of ages from Gen Z to baby boomers. There are also commissioners who identify as immigrants or refugees, people with a range of disabilities, and who travel by different modes around the region and who are both homeowners and renters. We are also working with our government affairs tribal liaisons to add representation from our region's urban indigenous communities to the commission. We'll come back with an amendment, possibly with an amendment to add a person to fill that spot to this commission. We're also working with GAPD and the Tribal Affairs Coordinator to consult with the tribes through a formal consultation process on the Future Vision project, which you'll hear more about as we continue to move through this process. We're really excited to convene this group in September. It's a wonderful group of people. We've spoken with all of them, and they're excited about it as well. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to Jess.
Great, thanks, Malou. And I did just want to mention the name that is not on the screen because he is not needing appointment by Metro Council is Councilor Gonzalez, who will be a non-voting chair of this body. All right, next slide, please. So the second exhibit to this resolution is the charge to the Future Vision Commission. And this is really what we developed in response to those work sessions that we had with council earlier this year to make sure that your guidance to the commission is very clear in what you'd like them to accomplish in this process. Some of that comes from the Metro Charter. The commission is charged with developing and recommending the Future Vision to council, and the charter language is that they consider all relevant information and public comment. So our work has been to flesh out that charter guidance. It's been very clear as well that though this is a 50-year vision, we also want to make sure that folks are considering implementation as they're developing that 50-year vision. Next slide, please. The charge also includes Metro Council's guidance for how these commissioners should approach their role. We are looking for folks who can be a champion of this process out in their various networks and parts of the community. And we really want folks to use those opportunities to build connections across sectors. Those are across lines, invisible lines between government, business, philanthropy, academia. Those are the folks we want to bring together and expect commissioners to be working across those lines in this process. Each of them is going to bring their own individual academic, professional, and lived experience to this, but they really should be considering the work from a systems perspective and feeling like they can engage with all of the topics that are discussed, no matter whether they are the person in the room who is most expert on that topic. Next slide, please. Additionally, the Metro Council provided guidance about the topics and themes that at minimum this commission will be considering, and those are listed up here on the screen. Really, the first 4 of these should be considered in terms of how each of them can advance racial equity within Greater Portland, and that's the language that's in the charge itself. Next slide, please. So last, the charge really includes an overview as well as to how the commission is going to engage with the vision development process. Commissioners are charged with considering and understanding the research that will be conducted by Metro staff and consultants, and that includes research on current trends and potential future outcomes, really including the uncertainty that comes with visioning at this 50-year time horizon. This and other research kind of comprise that consider all relevant information direction that is in the charter. But I just want to note that the commission is empowered, should they desire to, ask us to do more research kind of within project resources to provide other pieces of information that they feel is relevant to the process. The other part of this equation is that folks on the commission really need to be considering all public comment. We'll be gathering that in a few different ways, including, as Malou mentioned earlier, ways that really seek to engage those other folks who applied to be on the commission, other leaders throughout different sectors in the region. But then also we want to make sure that at the end of the day, this is a process and a vision that is accessible, interesting, and feels like is something that resonates with the residents of the region overall. So we have not given guidance to the commission about what form the eventual vision should take, but we have given them guidance to say that it really needs to be something that is accessible and resonant to the residents of the region. On that note, related but not included in the charge, I do want to mention that staff are working to develop the ways in which we will be engaging the creative community in this process to draw on the just really specific skill set and imagination that artists can bring to this process. So that's something we're really excited about and will appear throughout the process. And at the end of the day, we'll be asking for their help to help us envision what the region could look like in 50 years. All right, next slide, please. So our next steps are releasing 2 RFPs. One is for the larger consultant team that will be helping us with this effort. And then the second is a specific RFP for a team that will help conduct the equity audit of the 2040 growth concept that was called for in Resolution 255458, which was the follow-on to the urban growth management process. So those 2 will be out this summer. And then as Malou noted, we'll have the first commission meeting in September. So with that, I'll hand it back to Councilor Gonzalez for your consideration of resolution for the purpose of selecting the appointees to the Future Vision Commission.
Great. So councilors, any questions, comments on the commission? Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Chair. First question is, since this is a fairly short fused project and you have 22 people, and one has to assume that some small number of them will have to leave or whatever, personal reasons or whatever. Do we have a rapid replacement process for replacing members of the commission at that time? I mean, in other words, so it doesn't take 4 months to get somebody up to speed.
That's a great question.
And then my general comment is, as you know, we are entering a constitutional crisis. I suspect that they're going to have to deal with governance as a key issue coming forward. We don't know how the summer is going to turn out, but it's going to be something that they're going to have to deal with.
Appreciate your comments. I think we can, as earlier today in your meeting, you had on your consent agenda, you were adding some members to core. Any change in membership for the Future Vision Commission would be approved by the Metro Council by resolution. And so it doesn't need to take 4 months. It can happen relatively quickly.
Will we draw them from the list of the people who applied or that we thought were appropriate? Or will we go out for I guess my question is, are we going to go through a new process, or are we just going to use the list we have and work from that?
We can go back and think about that and figure out a process. I would imagine we'd want to draw from those who have already applied, but we frankly haven't talked that through. So I don't want to answer on behalf of everyone else. I want to be sure that we all agree on the right approach there. But it would make sense to draw from those who have already applied, and we'll make sure to clarify that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments, questions? No? Remind us the total number of applicants that we had to date as of right now.
A little over 100. I can't remember the exact number. And we have 22 members of the commission.
Thanks.
Yep. And I forgot to give Malou this note for her agenda slide. Major shout out to Melanie Reinert in Parks and Nature, who helped identify the oak, which is in.
That was my next question.
The what?
The oak from the first slide. I was like,
That is Graham Oaks Nature Park.
Graham Oaks?
And
Got it.
Did you win the bet?
I won the bet.
yes,
Where's my prize?
I believe there's a coffee.
Coffee on
owed
me,
to
counselor.
someone. Yes, also helpfully pointed out that photo is actually featured on Metro's Parks and Nature website, and is identified as a special tree in that Metro property.
I love the follow through. Yeah, I think, over 100 leaders raised their hands to help us think about this moment of transition and change, but also of aspiration for our region. And it's such an honor for us to have that level of attention, right? Like the list was impressive. The decisions, I'm sure, were grueling because, again, there's so much leadership. And I think one message that we want to share with folks, obviously for the charge of those that have the great opportunity of being appointed, but for those that haven't been, is that we will find ways to engage them and activate that leadership because I think from the work sessions that we had with the consultant as a council, and also in some of the pre-scoping conversations that President Peterson and I were able to have with some different clusters of groups, is that we want this process, the royal we want this process to be something that galvanizes like an alignment and gives us this window to work together and to collaborate, and it's not just something that sits on a shelf, right? And so I think we're yearning for that, and I am hopeful for this process that will help us through that. So I am also not seeing anyone else raise their hands to share comments, but Malu and Jess, thank you. Aaron, see you too, thank you. Can I get a motion, counselors, to approve resolution number 25-5490 for the purpose of confirming the appointment of members to the Future Vision Commission?
So moved.
Okay, how about a second?
A second.
All right, we have a motion from Counselor Nolan and a second by Counselor Huang. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Georgia, if you could please call roll.
Counselor Nolan?
Yes.
Counselor Wong?
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal?
Aye.
Counselor Lewis?
Aye.
And Counselor Gonzalez?
Aye, thank you. The resolution passes and we have a Future Vision Commission.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, on to Chief Operating Officer Communication. Marisa, do you have any updates to share?
Yes, just today, want to share a significant Parks and Nature Bond milestone in the Take Care of Metro Parks column. The Blue Lake Regional Park Office will be holding their grand opening event this Saturday, June 14th from 12 to 5. The new office building was built with sustainability in mind and designed to save energy and water while supporting the community. And fun fact, the landscaping around the building contains more than 50 species of native plants. So Parks team, super excited to show off the space and talk about how the building supports conservation. Ribbon cuttings at noon, then there'll be tours of office space, food, music, nature walks, lawn games, and free life jackets. So the event is free, but parking is $5. Make it. Thank you.
Thanks. Colleagues, any questions or comments for Marisa? Okay, seeing none. Council Communications, any updates?
I have a number of updates.
Counselor Lewis raised their
First.
hand first, and then we'll go to you,
Okay.
Counselor Rosenthal.
Sure.
Sure, I'll be quick. Tri-County Planning Body met last night, very good discussion. In particular, we discussed how the President's Work Group is going, as well as long-term planning as part of governance. Thank you.
Nice. Counselor Rosenthal?
Yeah, first, I already mentioned the TOD group and moving forward on making it more possible to acquire lands. I think that's an important step forward. But I want to report, yesterday we had a groundbreaking for a new facility, 63 units in Tigard, the Wood Hearth. It's got some woodland hearthstone. I guess is the correct name. It was quite a combination of efforts on the parts of both the county as well as the city of Tigard, as well as SEPA and Colas Construction. So it was a good thing. The reason I pointed out, though, is it now makes 4 or maybe 5 units that we have, subsidized units of people in the Tiger Triangle area. It just occurs to me that these all units could benefit if we had been able to move forward with the Southwest Corridor, because they're all in this area. And there's a SEPA one that we didn't fund. There's the Viewfinder. There's the Senior Center in downtown Tigard. There's this one which came with both TOD as well as regular funding or bond funding. So there's a lot of stuff going on in that area of Tigard. So maybe that bodes well for the future planning for transit in that area. I hope so. On the other one, I want to report a bunch of things that the Oregon Zoo Foundation met this morning. And there's a number of things that are fairly important. First of all, they are going to be electing a new foundation director with the focus on conservation education. That's fairly important. One of the other things that that's important. One of the things they reported is, as many people don't know, that 25 cents of all the admission to the zoo goes to our conservation foundation, which we share or which we use to support 3 international conservation groups. One is a rhino group, one is a giraffe group, and one is a predator group, carnivore group in northern Mozambique. Recently, ISIS attacked the area that we support, and we support local villages. There's 2,000 people that work in this, and we support the work of scouts that are in this. 2 of the scouts were killed. 2 of the scouts are now held by ISIS, and one of them survived and is being treated. That's a big thing. People don't realize that we do engage in some of these fairly important conservation. I think they authorized a $25,000 check to that group today. Another thing that's important is anybody who wants to sign up for PICA monitoring. Remember, PICAs are the lowest monitoring group the lowest PICA group in the world, and you can get into monitoring them in the Columbia Gorge and go hiking at the same time. That's opened up. I forgot to mention the conservation area is called the Niassa Conservation Area in northern Mozambique. That's the area where where we are supporting the carnivore and where we had this rather tragic investigation. And finally, there was a rather extensive presentation about the ZAP, the Zoo Apprenticeship Program. We renamed that about 2 years ago. It's been very successful. There's usually about a 9 out of 10 completion rate. One of the people who just completed is going on to study and got a full ride to USC. But I asked them, I said, so what is the message that you would like council to hear? And their message was, this is an important program. It needs to be extended to other zoos throughout the country, because we were the first one to have an apprenticeship program that focuses on particularly on communities, disadvantaged communities, and getting students that otherwise wouldn't have opportunities, get them involved. And this needs to be expanded to other zoos throughout the country. I forgot one other point I wanted to make regarding the project, the Hearthstone project. It exceeded the goals of 50% of the project is going to be occupied by WBE, MBE, and emerging businesses. So it's a very productive project, highly exceeds our initial goals, and should be, I think it's a great project. It's under construction and it should be finished in 15 months.
Very robust updates, Councilor Rosenthal. Thank you. Appreciate that. I have a quick update from this morning's JPAC meeting. Hopefully, Councilor Lewis helps me fill in the gaps. It's already been a very long day. Just basically absolutely dope moments to have JPAC vote to approve both the 82nd Avenue LPA and the TV Highway LPA, representing over $640 million in transit investment for the most ridership lines, I think, in the state of Oregon. And so that was just phenomenal, and just grateful for the hard work in that. That action will now come to the Metro Council as well, and the LPAs are just fundamental to those projects advancing with FTA. And I think 82nd Avenue, assuming everything is all systems go, would open in the summer of 2029, and TV Highway in 2030. So we are planting seeds, continuing to plant seeds that we will hopefully harvest in the future. We also had conversation about a transit representation as a part of our MPO certification process, in which Ted and Ted Labeled are planning, one of the transportation policy directors here at Metro, to discuss the steps that Metro is going to be taking to set tables and consider potential expansion of representation at the TPEC level. So we had a good conversation about that. And also staff presented on the Regional Flexible Fund bond, in which we're looking to advance the 5 projects that you've all heard about, which include TV Highway, 82nd Avenue, Sunrise Gateway Project in Clackamas County, and then the Montgomery Streetcar and the Burnside Bridge. And because of some of the work and updated forecast and analysis, our bond window is going to have some extra cash, and so we're able to increase step 2 and actually have a slightly larger step 1 bond to accommodate for the project allocations that support the project's asks. So that vote for JPACT will be happening on July 17th, and then there will be a vote as well from the Metro Council on the RUFA bond. So just want to close the loop on that. Counselor, is there anything I forgot?
That covers it.
All right, great. Any other updates? Do you still have your hand up by any chance, Counselor Rosenthal?
No, other than say that the Rose Festival was great with the float honoring our Grand Marshal Tula II.
Yeah, for sure. I think I saw Counselor Ashton Simpson participating in that. It's pretty cool. All right, well, seeing no further discussion, this council meeting is adjourned. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, June 17th at 10:30 in the morning. Thank you all